Thanks for joining this Substack Live. I'm with another Joe. So excited to chat with him and get your take, Joe Thomas, on what the hell, the craziness going on in America these days. Christina, hi. Hey, as everybody comes in, let me introduce my guest this evening. It is, and by the way, I'm going to say this a bunch of times tonight. You need to subscribe to Joe Thomas's Substack. Joe Thomas, it's the Joe Thomas newsletter. Follow him, subscribe to him on Substack. Joe Thomas. He's got a podcast and a Substack all about American politics, media, and culture from a liberal's perspective. That guy you're looking at right there, Joe Thomas, is with us. It's 10 o'clock in the morning where he is in Australia. Joe Thomas, welcome.
Thank you so much for that amazing welcoming. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. Yeah.
Educate us as our listeners come in tonight. Where in Australia are you?
I'm in Brisbane, Australia. So that is in the state of Queensland. So it's on the east coast. It's about it's just north of. So you have Sydney. We're about an hour flight north of Sydney. So I'm originally from Sydney myself, but moved to Brisbane about 10 years ago. Yeah.
Awesome. Again, as everybody comes in, Joe Thomas is one of my favorite reads on Substack.
Thank you.
So to all of my listeners, oh, absolutely, Joe. I mean it. I want more people to pay attention to what you're putting out. So everybody coming in right now who subscribes to Joe Walsh, please do me a favor and subscribe to Joe Thomas. He gives a fascinating perspective on all the crazy shit that's going on politically in America right now. Joe, start kind of at 30,000 feet.
Yeah.
When you sit there, it's 10 o'clock in the morning where you are right now in Australia. Tonight, when you're sitting there, maybe having a beer, and you think about America, I mean, just from a big picture, what do you think's going on here? And how does it make you feel?
Yeah, look, as an outsider from Australia, people probably in America are probably surprised sometimes when they find out I'm Australian because I'm talking about American politics, but it's actually quite normal. A lot of Australians are fascinated with America because it's like a big country. It's the most powerful country on the planet, but also a lot of the culture from America comes to Australia. So movies, music, and your politics is more interesting than ours. So ours is quite boring, but that's the way we want it. We don't want our
Joe, before we get into politics, the average Australian, generally, forget about Trump and forget about the current political situation. Do most Australians generally think America's a good, cool, awesome country, or where? What?
Yeah, I think they do. I mean, I think putting Trump aside, I think Australians have always had a fascination with Americans because it's just so culturally similar to us. And even as a kid in the 80s, I would go to watch American films. So it was, Steven Spielberg and all that sort of stuff. So it's, the music, a lot of the music comes from Australia. So Australia's always been fascinating. And we're a small country. Like geographically, we're a big country, but population, we've only got about 27 million people.
Wow.
Yeah. So we've always loved America, and we always thought America were the good guys. Yeah.
What would the average Australian then say is the best part of America and the worst?
Currently, I would say the best part of America is probably some of its culture, like as I said before, films, music, that sort of stuff. I also think a lot of Australians, and I've noticed this when I've met Americans traveling in Australia, is they're very open people. They're very friendly. you can have a. It's so easy to talk to an American because they're very good conversationalists.
Yeah.
um, some of the other countries I've been to, they're great people, but they're a bit more. It's a bit harder to have back and forwards banter. So I think the openness of Americans has always been something that Australians have always loved. Um, the worst part of America is maybe it's always had a little bit of being insular, not
Yeah.
looking at the rest of the world. And often Americans don't travel as much, I don't
Yeah.
feel. When I was in Europe, when I was in my 20s, I would often meet so many Canadians, traveling, backpacking through Europe and all that, but I'd rarely meet an American. And I thought that's unusual because Canada's population is so much smaller. So I think maybe that sort of thing, maybe they don't, maybe that's a bit of a generalization, but don't travel as much. Um, but look at the rest of the world as well on equal footing. Yeah, yeah,
Joe, I think that's really right, and a lot of
yeah,
studies through the years back that up.
yeah,
The rest of the world has a lot more knowledge about America than Americans do about the rest of the world.
yes, yeah, yeah,
Completely
yeah,
agree. You mentioned a few minutes ago that
mm,
clearly our politics is crazy, and it's been crazy for a while.
yes,
You said your politics in Australia is kind of quiet and normal, and you like it that way. You like it
yeah.
that way?
Yeah, I do because we don't. We want our politicians to be boring, and we want them just to talk about. We want them to talk about policy, about we don't. We want them to talk. We want them to understand what policy is. Like obviously, when I hear Trump talk, I know he doesn't understand what the policies are. He has no idea. Um, a lot of the politicians in Australia, whether they're centre left or centre right, you could basically when they get interviewed, they know detailed knowledge about healthcare, about the military, about any subject. They could go into a lot of detail. I mean, Obama could definitely have done that, but I don't think Trump could do that. So we like the fact that our politicians, and also they don't, they're not putting people down all the time. They're not trying to get. It's not about ratings or all that sort of stuff. It's very bland. It's very dry. But I think that's good for politics, and it's also because we're not as extreme as some other countries because of that. We also have, I don't know if you know, compulsory voting in
Yes.
Australia. Yeah, yeah. Which
Yeah.
means that, and look, it's only a fine if you don't vote. You're not going to go to jail or anything. But what it does,
Joe, that's always fascinated me because I'm
yeah,
pretty libertarian
yes,
and I don't want my government saying I have
mm,
to vote.
yeah,
How is, but the compulsory voting, is that
mm,
generally pretty accepted by most
yeah.
Australians?
Yeah, we do because first of all, as I said, like nothing's really going to happen. Like if you all you need to do is email someone and say I was sick, and nothing's
Yeah.
going to happen to you. It's really easy to get out of. Yeah, yeah. Um, Also, our waiting times at the polling booths are like 5 minutes. So
Wow.
you know what I mean. So and you can vote 2 weeks beforehand. So and there's so many places. We make it really easy. We have an independent body that makes sure that it's just as easy to vote for a centre right party person than it is for a centre left. Um,
Wow.
so we're not trying to stop people from voting. We're trying to encourage everyone to vote. Yeah,
That
yeah, yeah,
everybody coming in right now, that guy right there, you've got
yeah,
two Joes on your screen. You
yeah,
know who I am. I'm talking to Joe Thomas. He's in Australia right now. He lives
yeah.
in Australia. He writes just beautifully about
Thank
American
you.
politics. And
Yeah,
it's a fascinating perspective. And this is why I encourage everybody listening, subscribe to Joe Thomas, subscribe to
yeah,
the Joe Thomas newsletter. He's got a
yeah,
podcast as well, but it's a really interesting perspective on everything that's going on in America right now from an
yeah,
Australian's perspective. So subscribe to Joe Thomas on Substack. Joe,
yeah,
why do you think, and why do you think most Australians think this country,
yeah.
this great, great country, elected this dumbass bad person twice? Like,
um,
why do that you all think
yeah.
that?
I think there's different reasons for both times. I think in 2016 he was voted in because there were a lot of Americans who wanted to blow up the system. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And they thought even if I don't like Trump, maybe he'll blow up the system and
Joe,
something.
by the way,
Yeah,
my
yeah,
history, I was in Congress before Trump. I
yes,
went to Congress wanting to blow up our system. I
yeah,
voted for Trump in 16. I didn't
mm,
really pay attention to him. I just
yeah,
voted for him because I did want disruption. So
yeah.
continue.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's pretty, I think that was a common thing in 2016. Even if you didn't like him, you thought, you know what? If he blows up the system, we can then start from scratch and start something new. I think in 2020, it was different. I actually do think that inflation played a big part, cost of living played a big part. Um, I think more since COVID, more and more people in America and Australia and other countries, they're not paying attention to politics.
Yeah.
Um, there's so many things to distract you these days: TikTok, streaming services, all this sort of stuff. So people are only following politics on the peripherals. And if that's the case, maybe when you saw Trump showing up at court every day, remember he was at court every day, and
Yeah.
he's like, "This is a witch hunt," and they're like, "Whoa, why is he in court every day?" They might have started getting the impression that he was again the outsider. Do you know what I mean? So, but I also think people romanticized how good the economy was when he was in power, and I think that played a really big part of it. And I think in 2024, incumbent governments all around the world were kicked out. In I think is in there has never been a year like 2024. I think Mexico was the only country that wasn't kicked out as the incumbent
Yeah.
government. So I think
Yeah.
cost of living did play a big part. I think he used, like for example, a lot of people say that TV ad he did with trans people, that they are for them, but I'm for you. I think that was an effective ad in the sense that they tied that ad towards the economy, saying that Democrats are so focused on woke, but we're focused on you. You know, so I think even though obviously that wasn't true because the Democrats ran away from woke. So
Oh,
yeah,
completely, Joe. Completely.
yeah,
Look, I
yeah,
come from the right. I agree with you.
yes,
The
yeah,
Democrats didn't even fight on that issue.
yeah,
You you make a great point because
yeah,
I was out there campaigning every day for Kamala Harris last year.
yeah,
And Joe, I had so many people tell me, in fact, most
mm,
people told me, look, Joe, I know Trump's an asshole,
yeah,
but the Democrats, but Biden, but the
mm,
border. But
yeah,
like this last time around,
mm,
like people voted for him knowing he's a bad guy.
yeah,
I
yeah,
heard that over and over.
yeah. Yeah, and I think part of that is because I think generally human beings will vote in someone they think is a bad guy if they think they can make their rents lower, their 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 house prices cheaper, their everyday living expense. They're willing to overlook that for the everyday experience that for the average American is doing it. He also tried to portray himself as a working class hero. I
Yeah.
think even though we know that's a lie, I think there's a lot of people, especially with the Joe Rogan experience and all that sort of stuff. He tried to I think he infiltrated that manosphere in the podcast world very well. Yeah, yeah,
Do you uh,
yeah,
do Australians think we're nuts? This,
yes,
in like
yeah,
Joe, that we did it like the first time. I get it, right?
yeah,
I voted for him, and
yeah,
it was an anti-establishment mood, and Hillary
yeah,
Clinton was the poster child for the establishment.
yeah,
I get all of that,
yeah.
but man, then you know what Trump is. Do Australians think we're just idiots for electing him again?
I mean, yeah, I mean, Trump isn't very popular in Australia or around the world, but I will say he was more popular here before he put on tariffs on us. So,
Yeah.
like he was never very popular, but his popularity went down even further because he came after us. You know what I mean? So, um, but yeah, I think Australians probably think that Americans are attracted to reality TV stars. Because he comes from the movie. Australians, when they think of America, they think the movie industry, TV, and he
Yeah.
basically comes from that world. So
Yeah.
we think he just seduced, a lot of Americans. We also probably, and this, I don't think this is correct, but a lot of Australians probably say that Americans are less educated, and therefore you're easier to manipulate in terms of believing.
Well,
Yeah,
Joe, look, that's and I want everybody listening right now. This is
Yeah,
such a great perspective. And Joe,
yeah,
again, when you look at the numbers, I think the rest of the world forgets how big we are.
yeah,
And
yeah,
like we have 50 states, and
yeah,
every state is in charge of their own elections,
yeah,
and 340 million people, and we're very diverse.
mm,
And so, yeah, there's plenty of people who aren't real educated who vote,
yeah,
who
yeah,
don't pay attention, who vote. And I
yeah,
think in other countries, and Joe, maybe it's like this in Australia, I bet it is, the
yeah.
average voter's more informed, aren't they?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, I do think so. We I do think as the average voter is more informed in Australia. I think probably better educated in how it works. Um, they the centre right party, because we just had an election here in Australia just recently, and we had a similar outcome to what happened in Canada, where
Mhm.
our centre right government tried to jump on the Trump train
Uh,
um, when Trump was first elected. That before the tariffs, before he wanted to invade Greenland, which we find hilarious. I mean, it's insane, but that's when we hear Trump say he wants to invade Greenland or annex Canada. That's when I think people went from he's not a great person to oh my god this guy is insane. Like that really took us to a completely different level. Yeah, yeah.
he,
But
Joe,
yeah,
he got
yeah.
Mark Carney elected in Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Uh,
And he probably helped Australia, the centre left government, get elected here because the centre right government, as I said, when Trump was first elected, they were just starting to get into the election. And so when Trump first was elected, there was a bit of momentum behind him. He had
uh,
Elon Musk there, and it was before all that crazy stuff. And so he was, so our centre right guy was saying, so let's set up something similar to Doge in Australia. All that stuff. But then when it all went crazy, they tried to backtrack. But by that time, it was too late. Yeah, yeah,
is
uh,
is
yeah,
it is it still safe to generally describe Australia as a what we would term in America as a center left country?
yes, yeah, yeah. I would call Australia centre left. I do think European, Australian countries are more to the left generally than
Yeah,
America. Like
yeah.
Barack Obama probably could have been in our centre right party as a moderate, not as a far right, as a moderate. um, for example, our healthcare policy is it would be way to the left of what you have in America, although it's not perfect by any means. We certainly have our effects, but yeah, that's another thing that Australians never liked the healthcare system in America where you hear of people going, bankrupt. That doesn't really happen in Australia. Yeah, yeah,
we have
yeah,
we have this tension here that we've
mm,
always had
yeah,
pre-Trump between individual freedom and kind of the role of government. And
yes,
it's it's always been there. And I think because and I throw myself in this lot,
yeah,
so many of us so firmly believe in individual freedom
mm,
that we don't have the government services that our European counterparts in Australia have.
yeah, yeah. And I think that's part of possibly what got someone like Trump elected as well. I think there's a thing of collectivism in
Yeah.
Australia. And that collectivism comes from healthcare and all these other things where we might pay slightly higher taxes, not a lot, um, but you get benefits in return for that. Yeah, for everybody. And I think in America there's kind of more of a libertarian side of
Yeah.
government. Even with the Trump does attract a lot of libertarians. Um, and I think when he brought in Doge and says we're going to smash the government, that's great for those people. They feel great. And if you demonize government enough, you can then basically get rid of Medicare, Medicaid, all that sort of stuff because you go, look, the government doesn't know how to run anything, so let's get rid of it. But they don't want to replace it with anything; they just want to get rid of it. so
No, and
yeah,
Joe, you're right. And
yeah,
as someone, I left the Republican Party five
yeah,
years ago because of Trump.
yeah,
Like I wouldn't even call it a limited government party anymore. Trump is like Joe. Trump's like an authoritarian. The
yes,
Republican Party has become very authoritarian, like
yeah, yeah,
using government to to do what they want. It's kind of
yeah.
scary.
Yeah, look, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, some of the things that Trump has done, like has just amazed. Like recently with, wanting to get, sending Garcia, the guy, off to El Salvador,
Yeah,
and then yeah, it's just like that stuff is just insane. And also, that interview he did with the ABC where he was talking about the Photoshop tattoo.
yeah.
I mean, just so you know, in Australia, we found that hilarious that he didn't realize that was photoshopped. Yeah,
Do
yeah,
you think, Joe? Do
yeah,
you think, and does the average Australian think,
yeah.
as I do, that he's a fucking idiot?
Yeah. So I've got to say this. This is a recent thing for me. I've always thought he's an idiot, right? But I always thought I couldn't quite work out how much of it he's a con artist and how much he's an idiot. I'm starting to realize he's a con artist, but he's way more of an idiot than I thought he was. Yeah. Because I thought he was doing it on purpose. Thought he was acting like the idiot on purpose. But I actually do think he believes that MSM13 was Photoshop.
Yeah.
He got into an argument with a reporter, and let's be honest, that ABC reporter was trying to help him. He was
Yes.
trying to, yeah, he was saying, "Oh, you mean it's a translation?" And then Trump goes, "No, this is why you're the fake media." And then the reporter tries to help him even further by saying, "Let's talk about something else." And so this fake news was actually trying to save Trump from his own stupidity. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's amazing. Yeah,
and his whole thing, Joe, on
yeah,
supporting Putin
yes,
and giving the back of his hand to Ukraine. What's your
yeah.
thought on what down there on that?
Oh, look, it's awful. Look, we are big supporters in Australia of the Ukraine government. I am as well. Um, I just think it's this whole thing with Putin. I mean, there's always been some weird relationship with the MAGA movement and Putin going back to 2016. I mean, even in the Oval Office with Zelensky, where him and JD Vance were kind of berating him, he then out of the blue starts talking about RussiaGate and how and also how Putin was involved. How they came after Putin as well during RussiaGate, and he's like, "Where's this coming from?" Like it was a very bizarre thing. And Zelensky is there, who, like, I think it was 2017, Russia was trying to do a pro quo with
Yeah,
Zelensky to get information on Hunter Biden. So there's this whole connection with RussiaGate and all that stuff where he sees Putin as an ally, and almost like a friend. Yeah, it's a very
I
strange thing. Yeah. Mm.
I I know a lot of people here in power privately believe it. I
Yeah.
will go on CNN and I'll say it.
Yeah.
I think he's a Russian asset.
Really? Okay.
I don't think Russia's paying him, but
Mm.
I think Putin has always had something on him,
Yeah.
and I think his support for Putin is there is much more sinister than, oh,
Mm.
Trump would just like to be an authoritarian like Putin.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think there's more there.
Yeah, it is very strange. Like it is a very strange because it's gone on for so many years and it's never
Yeah,
sort of went away. And the fact that you would call Zelensky a dictator and that he started the war, but never says anything bad about Putin.
yeah.
It's there's something else got to be. I don't think there's a PP tape. I don't believe in that.
I don't
But
either. Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that was probably not real. But there's
Well,
probably a financial relationship or in terms of hotels, maybe the development or something like that. Maybe it's not direct money, but it could be something else. Yeah, yeah,
for
yeah,
for a long period of time,
yeah,
the only money Trump and his family could get was
yeah,
Russian money
yeah.
for a
Right.
long period of time back in the day. The
Yeah,
other interesting point you made is I
yeah,
come from the right. I come
mm,
from kind of the MAGA base.
yeah,
I got out of it,
yeah,
um, but there's always been kind of an openness on the right in America
yeah.
to embrace a strongman, an
Yes.
authoritarian.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
the left has their issues here, but I
yeah.
think you find that authoritarian
Mm.
love on the right here.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well. Like, especially like Trump has sort of brought that out in the open more. I think it's always been there, but they've brought it out in the open more. And maybe that's part of America knowing that it's they're the strongest country on the planet,
Yeah.
and maybe some of the people at the bottom going, "Well, let's use that power for our own benefit." Do you know what I mean? And Trump is basically doing that. He's saying, "Hey, we've got this amazing population that buys a lot of products from around the world. We have this military that is the strongest military in the world. Why aren't we leveraging that to get
Yeah,
us more things for our country? And I think that's maybe where the authority, because New Zealand couldn't do that because it's a tiny country. Like it wouldn't have,
yeah,
they'd laugh at it, you know. Um, I think there's maybe a bit of that, like, you know, Trump is doing what they all should have done in the past. Is yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Everybody, I want you
yeah,
to subscribe to Joe
yeah,
Thomas.
yeah,
The guy I'm talking to, the other Joe I'm talking to right now.
yeah,
He's an amazing follow and a really, really interesting read on Substack. So subscribe to Joe Thomas, subscribe
yeah,
to his Joe Thomas newsletter. He
yeah,
lives in Australia. He
yeah,
gives a fascinating perspective on
yeah,
what's going on here politically. Joe,
yeah.
how long have you been writing and thinking about American politics?
Oh, look, I'd say I was probably got into American politics like a lot of Australians and probably a lot of people around the world after 9/11.
Ah,
Um, it really put the focus on America, and then after that was the war in Iraq, um, and then probably the next big thing was Donald Trump being elected. Yeah, yeah. So those things kind of radicalized a lot of overseas people to look at America more, and I think that even probably happened in the United States with Americans, you know, of a
yeah.
certain generation getting more involved in politics during that period. Yeah,
How do you decide
yeah.
every day and week what you're going to write about or talk about?
I just read the news. I mean, I'm still on Twitter. I still use Twitter.
Good.
Yeah, yeah. I just I would look at like things that Trump says or JD Vance says, and then I'll try to come up with something that I feel is like an interesting take
Yeah.
on what they are, something that's a little bit different to what. And I think as an outsider, maybe you have a different perspective to things. And I try to connect a lot of things that are happening around the world with what's happening in America. Um, but yeah, I try to do a lot of my articles about media as well. Like, for example, I do a lot of stuff about Tucker Carlson and
Oh.
MAGA media and all that stuff. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Well,
I mean,
Joe, my God,
yeah,
I knew Tucker way back when he was
yes,
like a
yeah.
free market libertarian like me. Oh my God, he's
Yeah, so you probably would have met
nuts.
him in real life. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
but
yeah,
yet, assuming Trump doesn't try to run again,
yeah,
um, and by the way, Australia and everybody assume the worst with Trump.
yeah, we do. Yeah,
If if if
yeah,
if Tucker Carlson
mm,
wanted to run for the Republican Party nomination,
yeah.
man, Joe, as you know, the base loves him.
Yeah, they do. They love him. Yeah, 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 yeah. And he's an interesting character for me because I remember years ago when he was on the Jon Stewart show, and they had that
Yeah,
sort of CNN crossfire, I think it was, and they had that really. So they've always had that back and forward thing.
yeah,
But since he's gone online, he's become more online in terms of the what he puts out. And we know through the Dominion lawsuits that Tucker Carlson was just telling his audience what they want to hear. It's always been fascinating to me about the MAGA movement, and I think Tucker Carlson, their relationship with him, encapsulates it. Is that they think Tucker Carlson is a truth teller. The
yes,
guy, the guy who got literally caught during the Dominion lawsuit lying because he was worried that he was going to lose his audience to Newsmax, and that also his stock prices might go down. So you know,
yeah.
it's insane that that's the person they think. And then when he went to online, specifically online, the first thing he says is, "I'm going to talk about aliens. I'm going to talk about ivermectin. I'm going to talk." Everything was very terminally online. You know, he knows how to get his audience. He will say one thing to a Fox News audience. He will say a different thing to his online audience. And yeah,
It's hard to know, Joe,
yeah,
what he believes.
yes,
He's in bed with Putin.
yes,
Um, it's really like a lot of people think it's an act right now. I don't
yeah.
know that this is an act with Tucker.
Really. So you think he's being genuine with this sort of yeah,
I believe like this is kind of a big part of who he always has been, and he's
right.
radicalized. And like a lot of people in this era on the right,
Mm,
they've
yeah.
like kind of come out of the closet. Trump
Yes.
has Trump has empowered a
Yeah.
lot of people on the right to really come out and say, "This is who I am."
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
I
know.
guess. Yeah. Look, that could be true. My only skepticism with Tucker is that we know from the Discovery and Dominion that he was saying one thing personally and saying it
Yes.
separately. So that makes me
Yeah.
think that that at some level he's captured by his audience, um, and he's only telling his audience what they want to hear because he was saying something privately completely different. So that makes me question his motives. Um, in this space, but maybe it's just now that he's online, he can just be himself because he doesn't have to worry about Fox News producers or Rupert Murdoch or whatever. Yeah, yeah. So
What
you
do you,
might be right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Joe? What do you most worry about for America?
Um, I worry that this Trumpism he's going to sort of make it normal. He's going to normalize Trumpism, and I noticed that even after the Democrats lost, is they started looking for the Joe Rogan of the left.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They started looking for politicians that were kind of like Donald Trump. Oh, let's go for Fetterman. He's a little bit like Trump. They started copying him is, I don't think, a great idea. So, um, but that makes me think that everyone's going to try to become him because they think that's going to be an electable way to get into power. Um, and I worry that he's normalizing lying. Um,
Yes. Yes.
you know, he normalizes things that, or giving people nicknames. Now, I know people giving people nicknames is not the worst thing on the world, but it kind of it kind of says a lot about what you are as a person. Do you know what I mean? That, and it's not the. I mean, invading Greenland would definitely be worse, but but I do think that he has normalized it. If you lie, what I think people realize now is if you lie 100 times a day,
Yeah.
you're graded on a curve and you get away with it. But if you lie once every 6 months, everyone will go, "Hey, you're a liar." Yeah,
Joe,
yeah,
Joe, Joe,
yeah,
Joe, Joe. That is brilliant. That
yeah,
is spot on. And
yeah,
that's what I said on television today.
yeah,
You are so right.
yeah,
Because Trump lies
yeah,
almost every time he opens his mouth,
yes,
it's no longer news when he lies.
exactly. Yes, I agree 100%.
We've
Yeah, yeah.
normalized it.
Yeah, that's right. And nobody and he lies so much, the media doesn't feel like it can keep up with it. And then they'll be
Yes.
told they have Trump derangement syndrome if they bring up every single lie he has. So it's like a trap. You get Trump derangement syndrome
How do
if you
you,
actually
so
point out
Joe,
his lie.
but
Yeah,
it's interesting. So,
yeah,
and I agree with you.
yeah,
And the media stopped doing their job on Trump. And
yeah,
if another politician lies, boom, they're all over it.
yes, yeah,
But so, how would you deal with this? In the media's defense,
yes,
he lies 1,000 times a day.
yeah. You,
We've
you can't cover
never,
that.
ever seen something like this
Yeah,
before.
yeah, yeah.
How does the media handle that?
Look, I think you have to. In Australia, we have this sports called cricket. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Cricket.
I
You have
know it, I've never played it.
a bat, and then someone bowls at you, and then there's a saying in Australia. Sometimes you've got to let it go to the keeper, meaning the person behind the batter who catches the ball, and that means that it's not always great to just try to hit every single ball. And I think you have to do that with Trump. You can't pick up every lie because if you pick up every lie, you're gonna also miss all the big things he does. You know what I mean? And you become obsessed with just the lies, and people tune out because it's just repetitive. It's the same thing over and over again. I think you have to pick out the big lies. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, and you have to also um, maybe instead of pointing out each individual lie, talk about the fact that he lies all the time, and he's normalizing that. And I think he gets away with it because the media doesn't want to fall into the category of being, oh, they just got Trump derangement syndrome. They're just picking every little thing he does. If he goes into a shop and orders the wrong food, he's a bad person. So you've got to be careful that you don't overwhelm the public because the public probably doesn't have hours and hours to go through every single lie that he does. Um, so I think sticking to the big lies is a big thing. Yeah.
It's actually, Joe, again,
Yeah.
I still believe he's primarily an idiot, but
Yes.
this has always been Trump's. If he's got a strategy, this has always been his strategy.
Yes.
Every single day,
Yeah.
tell 1,000 lies.
I agree.
Every single
100%.
day, do 1,000 crazy horseshit things,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we become numb to it all.
Yes.
And in fact, he's
Yeah.
told his closest advisors
Yeah.
that's what he likes to do.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. And that doesn't surprise me in the slightest. If I was to give Trump any credit, is that he's good at promoting himself, and
Yeah,
and he's good at he's good at diverting people's attention. He knows how to get attention, which I think these days is a big thing because
yeah,
people are so are diverted with TikTok and everything that eyeballs trying to get someone's eyeballs is a big thing, and that's something he's good at. Um,
yeah.
but I think that could also work against him now. He's the incumbent. I think that was good when you're not the incumbent, but I think it works against you when you are the incumbent. Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. And
yeah.
that's why he lost in 2020,
That's right because of
because
COVID. Yeah,
we
yeah,
saw him every single day and we said,
yes,
time out, I need a rest.
yes,
And then he won again in 24 because we were 4 years removed from the
yes,
daily batshit craziness.
yes, yes,
Joe, if in America, we only got these two political parties.
yeah,
And so the Democratic Party is the opposition party.
yeah,
If you had the brainiacs, the leaders of the Democratic Party, the resistance
yeah.
in a room, how would you advise them to beat Trump and MAGA?
Yeah, I think we need someone who can communicate well for starters to beat MAGA. I do think it'll be easier without Trump. I don't think JD Vance will be able to do what Trump does because he doesn't have that sort of cult-like figure about him. Um, I would probably recommend that Democrats talk more on different platforms. And
Yeah,
I don't mean the Joe Rogan play. It doesn't have to be Joe Rogan, but you see Pete Buttigieg at the moment going on all these shows who are kind of in that different world, and he's actually doing really well. They really love him because when people hear about Democrats' policies, they love it. They love it. But they were so focused on Joe Biden declining, they couldn't get to the policies. Do you know what I mean? So I think if we have a good communicator, that's going to make things so much better. And also concentrating on things that affect people's everyday life. Um, don't worry about too much about cultural issues, and worry more about everyday things like rents, home price. I mean, in Australia, the party that won was the party that said we need to build homes, 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 homes. And I think America has a similar problem where there's not enough homes. If you ran on a platform of building homes, there's a lot of renters, a lot of homeowners who want young people who want to get into the market. It's going to be a big thing that's going to really push them towards that party. Yeah,
it's Joe. Everything you just said is really smart.
yeah,
And
thank you.
again, this is part of Trump's, I guess, weird magic,
Yeah,
because every day he does things that go against our Constitution,
yes,
that are openly corrupt,
mm,
that attack our democracy. We who oppose him often find ourselves
yeah,
screaming every day about democracy and the Constitution and the
yes,
rule of law more than the bread and butter issues. And
yeah.
it's hard to figure out how to focus on both.
Yeah, I do think that the election showed that the more you focused on Trump himself and the less you focused on bread and butter issues, I think the less popular you became because at the end of the day, a lot of people who don't follow politics every day, like you and I,
Yeah.
they're basing who they vote on their everyday experience. So, how much rent am I paying? What am I paying for cost of living? Prices are going up, or that insurance is going up, and if you can target that, I think people will more likely vote for you. Yeah, yeah, because
Is,
the
is,
base is going to vote for you anyway. Yeah, yeah.
is Australia laughing at us right now, or are they really concerned with us?
We're probably a little bit of both, Joe. I've got to be honest. I mean, the whole like MS-13 thing was pretty hilarious. You know, and what I love is that his MAGA supporters have to then try to do like mental gymnastics to try
Yeah.
to. Oh no, he knew that. He was just trying to say his interpret, and that's the fun bit. You know, yeah,
No, that is the fun bit, Joe. And
yeah,
look, they're doing it
yeah,
now,
yeah,
trying to defend him receiving this $400 million
yes,
plane from Qatar.
yeah,
Like they're
yeah.
trying to defend that. It's hilarious.
Yeah, and Pam Bondi, from what I know, she was connected to the Qatar government for like it's like all connected to
Hundred,
yeah,
she was getting paid
yeah,
$115,000 a month
Whoa.
from the Qatar to lobby for the
Yeah.
Qatar government. Pam
Wow.
Bondi, our
Yeah.
attorney general.
Yeah. But Hunter Biden was selling paintings, so it's all.
So you,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you down there in
Yeah.
Australia, you do
Yeah.
both. You laugh at us, but
Yes.
you're a little worried about us.
I am worried about America because I'm worried because I love Americans. I really do love Americans. And I'm often on social media on Twitter, and I have the best conversations with Americans. And
Ah,
when I've met Americans in real life, they are the most friendliest people I've ever met. So, and I've even had conversations with MAGA people who it started combative, and as we went along, it was like, next time I'm in Australia, I'll come and have a beer with you.
oh
And I
yeah.
and I love that. You know what I mean? Like on Substack, I will often reply to people from MAGA, and they often tell me that no one else ever replies to them. Yeah, yeah.
that's
So
that's
yeah,
great, Joe. That's
yeah,
great.
yeah. So I'm
That's
not.
cool.
I don't hate MAGA necessarily. I think individually they're probably okay. Do you know what I mean? People, they've been sucked into this world. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
No,
yeah,
look, Joe, you're right. Look, I
yeah,
I come from MAGA, and
yes,
they're generally, and I know a lot of Democrats disagree with this. They're
yeah,
generally good people, and
yeah,
Democrats have a hard time with. Well, if they're good people, why the
mm,
hell did they vote for that guy?
yeah, yeah,
I get that. I
mm,
get that. But we're so divided, Joe, in this country
yeah,
now.
yeah.
We're at each other's throats.
Yeah, and I do think that if Trump leaves, that would certainly die down a bit, because I think a lot of the Republicans who are going to replace him, if the midterms go bad for Trump and the polling goes bad for Trump, that's going to give ammunition to the Republicans to go. I no longer have to go with this guy anymore. I can now create my own lane. Do you know what I mean? And maybe it will go back. The problem is that there's so many Republicans who are now part of. Well, it's basically the MAGA party, so it's going to be hard to decouple from that. I think. Yeah,
It's gonna, Joe. It's gonna be really hard. And you're
yeah,
young. I'm an old fart. I
right,
don't. I don't think it's gonna happen in my lifetime that the party will
yeah,
ever.
yeah,
But who knows? I mean, he is
yeah,
a cult leader, and it's
yeah.
hard to replace the original cult leader.
Yes, yeah. And JD Vance just doesn't. I mean, I actually, to some degree, have to say this. I find him slightly more annoying than Trump for some reason. I don't. I think it's because Trump is an idiot, right? As where JD Vance isn't an idiot. He
Right.
knows what he's doing. He knows what he's saying, and yet he says the most hot, the most almost like a robotic things the way he acts.
Yeah.
So to me, he's probably worse, and he's smarter too. He's more intelligent. So that's
Agreed.
why. Yeah, yeah.
Agreed.
So
Hey,
yeah,
everybody who's been listening to us, again, this
yeah,
is Joe Thomas. He's in Australia. He lives in Australia. He writes about American politics, media, and culture.
mm,
And his perspective is so fun and engaging
mm,
and important. I encourage everybody listening and
yeah.
everybody all of my subscribers,
Thank you.
damn it, subscribe to Joe Thomas.
Yeah,
Right now, subscribe to Joe Thomas on Substack, the
yeah.
Joe Thomas newsletter. It's so good. You'll get a great perspective that
Thank
will
you.
help you figure out what the heck we're going through.
Thank you
Hey,
so
Joe,
much.
this has been
Yeah,
a treat, man. Hey,
yeah,
I'm a tequila drinker. Could I find any tequila in Australia?
absolutely. Tequila is a big drink in Australia. Yeah, we
Is
we
it really?
yeah. Do you drink beer at all?
Oh, I figured I'd have beer everywhere if I were there.
Yeah, you would love it here. We have a great drinking culture in a respectful way, in a good way, of course. You know, but yeah, no, you'd love a tequila here. And if you ever come to Australia, to Brisbane, I'd love to show you around. Yeah,
I
yeah,
would love it. Joe, I
yeah,
would love that. Joe
yeah.
Thomas, thank you, my friend. This has
Thank
been
you
a
so
blast.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You and I will stay in touch. And
I will.
everybody else who's listening, you know the
Yeah,
deal.
yeah.
Subscribe to Joe Thomas.
Thank
Just
you
like
so much, Joe.
subscribe
I
to
really
Joe Walsh.
appreciate it.
Brother,
Yeah.
I love you, mate. Thank you, my
Love you
friend.
too, mate. See you,
Thanks,
mate.
everybody. Be
See
brave.
ya.